Second.
It's been properly moved and second that we go back into open session. I will now poll members to certify that to best of your knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements under the Virginia Freedom of Information Act and as identified in the motion for which the closed meeting was convened were discussed and considered by the board. If any member believes that the board varied from the purposes stated for the closed meeting, please state so and the reason prior to casting a vote. Mr. Gentry?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Barlow?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes.
Mr. Purcell?
Yes.
All right, we're back into open session. This is the Monday, October 2nd, 2023 meeting of the Louisa County Board of Supervisors. I'd like to welcome those who are in attendance here in the meeting room and those who are watching us online. As we do at every meeting, tonight we will start with an invocation by Mr. Williams and the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd like to join us, please stand.
Let us pray. Gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for loving us, Father, and we thank you for making a way for us to get to heaven, Father. Father, we pray for a peaceful meeting here tonight, Father. We pray that the things we do are pleasing in your sight and beneficial to our county, Father. Be with those people that protect us, the fire and EMS and the sheriff and the police and those that are serving us overseas and those that are serving us here on our shores. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. So I know that we have, we'll get to public comment in a minute. We have a public hearing tonight. We also, this is our third meeting using an electronic voting system. So we're getting better as we go along. We're not perfect on it yet, so we'll probably have a couple hiccups as we go along, but thought I would give you that warning as we start. First item is the adoption of the agenda. Mr. Jones?
Yes, I have something I'd like to go ahead and add.
Okay.
I'd like to add to unfinished business, a public hearing for our next meeting for Brackett's Farm for their tax exemption.
And do we have time, Mr. Goodwin, schedule-wise to advertise? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Is there any other changes to the agenda?
If not, I move we adopt the agenda as amended.
Second.
All those in favor signify or cast your vote.
I bet Tommy's first again.
I warned you. I told you. We're working our way through it.
I feel like a guy from the Western movie, baby. We fast. 6 fingers.
Yes, yes.
That's fine.
It's sitting there poised.
When this works properly, it is a little more efficient. And but it hadn't worked properly yet. All right. Motion passes 7-0. Next up is the approval of the minutes.
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? Please cast your vote.
Thanks for working on that.
Not getting the right screen.
Pass 7-0.
She's voting
Next
for you.
is the approval of the bills.
So move.
Second.
All right, properly moved and seconded. We approve the bills. Any discussion? Please cast your vote.
It's showing me voting, but I didn't.
Like clockwork.
It's not coming up.
Didn't pop up. It's okay.
Would you like to vote for or against, sir? Would you like to vote for or against?
All right, I see.
It's got Willie's yes.
I'm not voting.
I'm in.
I mean, I don't know. I didn't put, I'm not getting the screen I normally get.
Well, let's just see on the next one.
Better than hanging chads.
Yeah, you're still in the last meeting for some reason.
Oh, you see, you did.
You got to
yeah.
sign out from the last meeting to get in this one.
There you go.
Get that.
Thank you. But I've been voting.
What else is next?
All right, motion passes 7-0. Next is the approval of the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, or cast your vote.
Yeah, save.
Yeah, hit that save button.
Hit the save button, Tommy.
Motion passes 7-0. We're going to get this down about December, right when we get 2 new members on the board in January. So we don't have any recognitions tonight. Next is public comment period. I do have a few cards for public comment. So during public comment period, you can discuss anything that is not a public hearing. We do have a public hearing on short-term rentals tonight, so if that's what you're here to speak about, you'll wait till the public hearing on short-term rentals. You have 3 minutes. Once you come to the podium, give your name and your voting district. You do not have to give your address, just your name and your voting district. You'll have 3 minutes. I'll give you a warning when you have 15 seconds. We do have a lot of people here tonight that want to speak, either here or at the public hearing. So at 3 minutes, so that we can make sure that everybody that wants to speak, speaks. At 3 minutes, I will interrupt you if you're still talking, and we'll be done, all right? So the first person during public comment is J.R. Stallings.
I have some props for you. I have the green one back. The green one belongs to the wizard. They're COVID safe, so whatever. The only reason I'm here,
Mr. Stallings, I've told your name.
well, I apologize. Thank you for reminding me.
Yes, sir.
My name is J.R. Stallings. I am in the Mineral District. I run a research center called Ambient Energy Research Technology, scienceforreal.com, science, the number 4real.com. And the only reason I'm here is response to last meeting. There was some concerns about water use in the county, Northeast Reservoir, and the use of water by pending coming in data centers. And what I wanted to do was introduce to you the short version of what is aquatic planetary intelligence. The reason I gave you the pipe is this is a metal pipe. When you touch it and it's level, okay, you'll feel that it's cold, okay? Now, if it's, what that is by conduction, thermal energy from your hand going into the interior of this pipe. Now, there's no air moving left or right. However, if you tilt it up, the rule is warm air is rising, as you learned in 3rd grade. And as long as you touch this, the pipe will continue without any moving parts, any mechanical means to flow energy out from bottom to top. Now, the North End Power Station, as I have placed on the next door application, the details, and I've submitted in several letters to the county administrator to aid him, okay? This is an alternative to getting water that you would have been able to have gotten 10 years ago had we taken the device. Now, the reason I gave you this is so that you can take it home, because your body will be, in this example, North Anna Power Station. Now, North Anna Power Station has a warm water industrial lake. And if you take this pipe, or any pipe like this, and you route it through the warm water industrial lake, and you take it all the way uphill, in this case, is Zion's Crossroads, you take it underground before you get there, it'll rain every single day. Now, to prove that this week, when it's cold outside, or your window's cold, put this in your mouth, blow it against the window. And if there's condensation, the aquatic planetary intelligence phenomena I've explained to you is what you now have an opportunity to use.
15
in endless
seconds.
water and economic development. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. Next, for the public comment period is Vicky Hart.
Question before I start. I have a comment from as a town council member.
Well, give your name, you still get 3 minutes, so give your name and your voting district, and,
That's not a group?
no. 3 minutes.
Okay. All right. As a member of the Louisa Town Council.
Vicky, give your name.
Oh,
and-
Vicky Hart, Louisa, thank you. As a member of the town council, I would like to thank everyone that participated in the 150th birthday celebration. It was well-attended by everyone, and all of the attendees had a really good time. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention and remind you that it's only 150 years of incorporation. We were Louisa Courthouse before that. We're way a lot older than 150 years. So now back to the private citizen part. Flood controls. I'm sorry about the Blue Ridge Shores grant failure. I'm totally not surprised that it failed. I do have a problem with the entire bill being billed to the residents of Blue Ridge Shores because the Board of Supervisors voted to take us out of FEMA, and that's why they did not get that grant. And so I failed to understand why they are totally responsible for paying for it. Bike lanes and road improvements, I've been getting calls from people in the county and emails. If we're gonna be a bike route, then there needs to be a safe way to have these bikes on the road. Also, I would like to say that I owed Christian a list of my flooding contacts that so I did bring those contacts for your use, since apparently you've been able to get a hold of a lot of these people. And one page didn't come out the printer because I ran out of paper, so I apologize. I'll get that to you tomorrow. And that is it. Thank you.
Good job, Vicky.
Thank you. All right, I don't have any other cards for anyone that wishes to speak during public comment. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak during public comment? Again, I know we have a hearing for short-term rentals. If you're here for short-term rentals, you would speak during the public hearing. So is there, I saw somebody raise your hand. Did you want to speak during public comment, sir? Maybe not. You raised your pencil, now you're not looking at me, so I'm going to say that's a no. All right, so if not, I'm going to close the public comment period. The, under unfinished business is a conversation about Brackett's Farm, a public hearing. Ms. Jones?
You skipped number 5.
Oh, I
sir.
skipped one, I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
Information discussion items, I was so excited to move on to that.
Wonderful.
Is transit occupancy tax. Part of this has come out of the discussion on short-term rentals. I know that, I believe, and I think you're going to go over this, that yesterday Spotsylvania raised their transit occupancy tax from 7% to 9%. So I won't steal your thunder, I'll let you.
Sounds perfect. Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. I was asked to pull together some information on transit occupancy tax for y'all to review. The current Code of Virginia states that the counties can charge the first 2% that can be used for any kind of general fund expenditures we have. Anything over 2 and up to 5 gets spent solely on tourism and travel, marketing, and then anything above 5 can be used the same manner of general revenues. So that's just the code. So we started looking at what that would mean if the county of Louisa, for an additional revenue stream, raised our taxes a little bit, some things for you to consider. So I'm showing what we've earned in transit occupancy over the last 5 or 6 years. And in the last year, we earned $389,331, charging 2%. So if you were to consider increasing that tax to 5%, we would earn what we earn, hopefully, as long as things stay the way they are, an additional $583,000 to use on tourism initiatives to promote the county and to do different good things with tourism here. If you decided to go to 7%, it would raise an additional $389,000 that could be used for other things that we need within the county, like schools, police, sheriff, fire and EMS, things like that. I did do an analysis of what some other localities were charging. They're alphabetical by percentage. So Goochland, Louisa, Orange, right now charge 2%. Green, 5%. And these came right off the website, so if there's other increases, then I just don't know yet. Nelson has 5%, Stafford 7%, Albemarle, Hanover, and Henrico charge 8%, and Spotsylvania just went to 9% yesterday. So that's just a little bit of information that may or may not be something you'd want to consider in the next, couple months or during budget season, whatever you prefer. If you have any questions, I'll answer them.
When,
I'm sorry,
Yeah,
I
go
forgot I
ahead.
added this one. Cindy sent me this chart of the impacts of tourism on the county and the revenue streams. When we do promote tourism and bring in more tourism dollars, that also brings in more state sales tax, more employment, more, it had sales tax, meals tax, transit occupancy tax, everything. So having those extra tourism dollars to promote tourism and to bring in more tourism with the lake and the new growth areas and all that would be a benefit to the county.
part of those were Louisa numbers.
Were those
wasn't it?
Louisa numbers?
Yes, they were Louisa numbers.
Okay.
They were impressive.
Yeah.
Didn't specifically
They were
say
just
Louisa.
published, I think, last week. So Cindy sent them to me to include. I did that at the last minute.
Where'd they come from?
They came off the Virginia Tourism Corporation website.
So they're obviously estimates?
This was the 22 numbers, so I think they're
Actual impact.
actual impact numbers.
So they
I
actually-
went through and
somebody
read through
actually
some of it.
calculated there was
Somebody
$14.3 million
calculated,
in-
Yep.
Wow.
We discussed this last week, but I don't remember. Was it 2007 that the state allowed for transit occupancy taxes to be collected?
We implemented it in fiscal year I brought it, hold on one second. Say it. It'll be the last thing I pull. I want to say it was 2007 when we started.
Okay, that's the number.
Oh, here we go. December 19th, 2005 was when y'all voted on it to begin on July 1st, 2006, which is fiscal year '07.
Okay.
And it's been 2% since then.
No, wow.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Coleman?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Yes, the creation of the tax, I understand what it could be used for, but these are normally taxes that don't impact the local people.
That's true. Normally you have people from out of town coming in. That would be, we're trying to promote the county to bring people to vacation at the lake and to come in and see our wineries and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Coleman? What's the pleasure of the board? The board,
We would need, what this would be is to advertise for a public hearing. If it's something you're interested in, it would require a public hearing because it is an ordinance.
is there any objection to the board advertising for a public hearing?
No.
All right, Mr. Goodman?
Good with me.
Right, okay, we'll go that route.
Do you need a motion, Mr. Chairman?
I don't think we do we?
We have general direction from the board. We're good.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
All right, next then is under unfinished business, the public hearing for Brackett's Farms tax exemption.
Yes. Last week, well, at our last meeting, Brackett's Farm came and spoke about their need that they felt that they needed to upkeep the buildings and promote their agenda. They're a nonprofit organization. And they spoke to us, and Helen and I and Tony, we formed a committee, and we've been looking into their request. Helen and I went out. We took a fabulous tour last week, saw their buildings, saw the community gardens, saw all the groups, community local groups from 4-H to Louisa County Schools, to master gardeners who have been involved in preservation of the Brackett's Farm and their community gardens. It's open to the public. And so I would like for us to go ahead and hold a public hearing about us looking at reducing their tax structure that they are currently have right now.
and giving them an exemption based on their nonprofit status and what they're doing for the community and preserving Brackett's Farm.
Any other comments? Is there any objection to directing staff to hold a public hearing? Mr. Goodwin?
Good with me?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We don't have any new business items. Next up is committee reports. Do we have any committee reports? No? Board appointments? I don't believe there are any.
I think
board-
Willie has one.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to appoint Julie Manzuri to the Joint Board of Directors, effective January the 1st.
All right, any other board appointments? Is that a motion?
Yes, sir.
Is there a second?
Say,
Any discussion? Do we need to vote here, Alex? Yeah. All right, cast your vote.
They'll be doing it today at 10 o'clock. Job will be Tuesday from 12 to 2.
Cast a vote. They need to cast a vote.
Sorry, we got talking.
Mr. Gentry.
Sorry,
might
we
wanna
were
vote.
talking about Jaunt.
Yeah, that'd be good. Tommy, are you a yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Vote passes 601 with one abstention. Mr. Goodwin, County Administrator's Report.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, just a few items to bring to your attention. We're working to schedule a meeting with the Department of Conservation and Recreation on the use of the $1 million that the General Assembly approved in the most recent session for HAB mitigation on Lake Anna. May have at least one of you present at that meeting if you all are willing to be a part of it. Just also a reminder that we do have our legislative platform meeting coming up in late November. Please feel free to communicate with me if there are any other issues in addition to some of the ones that have been on the platform from years past. If you do have anything new, I've had a couple of you already reach out to me about issues that you want to discuss. Please reach out to me as soon as you can so that staff can research those and prepare them for discussion in November. We are working with the schools. I've talked to you, a couple of you about this. We are working with the schools on a recruitment process for public safety. I'm excited about it. Today in the high school and tomorrow in the high school, they'll have short assemblies with a video on public safety, career opportunities, fire and rescue, volunteer and career, and in law enforcement as well in the county. And we're hoping to follow that up with a public safety day with demonstrations and actual equipment and personnel out there for our students who want to pursue a local career here or just a public safety career in general. So I think that's going to be neat. We're excited about it, and the schools are as well. I know some of you were here this afternoon. For those of you here in attendance, we unveiled our student artwork in the county office building as we do every year. It'll be up for a year. It looks great. Take a moment to walk around the halls when we're on break during the meeting this evening. And just a few dates to make sure are on your calendar. We've got the Hometown Homecoming Parade this Thursday night, and Homecoming, of course, on Friday night. Fall Festival, Parks and Recreation's annual Fall Festival will be on Saturday, and Holly Grove Rescue's 40th anniversary is on Saturday as well. So if you need any further details, feel free to reach out to me, and that concludes my prepared remarks.
Any questions for Mr. Goodwin? All right.
I'd just like to say something. I heard from some students today that presentation at the high school was spot on, and they really enjoyed it. So I was glad to
The
hear
video
about
looked
that.
great. Thank you, ma'am.
All right, next then, we'll move on to our public hearing. We do have one public hearing tonight, which is an ordinance to amend the Land Development Regulations, LDR 2022-05, short-term rentals, and I believe that's Mr. Gillespie.
Thank you, Ms. Chair, members of the board. I'm going to deliver some remarks this evening. You received a memo in your packet as well as additional information on the proposed code amendment. So the purpose of short-term rental regulations is to address the current code. In the current code, we have a short-term rental of a dwelling defined, but not currently allowed without a conditional use permit, a CUP. And to date, there are no Louisa County properties that have a CUP that have been approved for the use. The objective of this regulation is to allow short-term rental of a dwelling as a commercial use in certain zoning districts by making necessary changes to the zoning code, and I will detail those. So commercial uses are those in which there's an exchange of money for goods and services. And in this case, the commercial use of short-term rentals is recognized that it is a form of commercial activity, in this case defined, where property owners rent out their dwellings to guests for periods less than 30 days. The reasons for the changes in the code are to recognize three things: the responding to demand. There is a growing popularity of platforms like Airbnb. It's increased the demand for short-term rentals. It's no longer an aberration or something coming. It is truly here in a different form to produce economic opportunities in this community, and that includes short-term rentals that provide an economic opportunity for the property owners, local businesses, and Louisa County. And lastly, the changing travel trends, and this has become increasingly apparent in the last few years. Travelers are increasingly seeking unique accommodations and local experiences, and in some ways, short-term rentals are uniquely poised to provide opportunities for both of those things, the setting and the venue, as well as the ability to be more nimble than other fixed properties. The reasons for regulations are that they would address the quality of life in those places where short-term rentals of a dwelling are located in a neighborhood or surrounding properties that could be affected that are residential in their use, in a way that does not negatively impact the quality of life, principally for full-time residents. There are, of course, other people who live in neighborhoods, and that's part of the issue, of course. So safety and zoning compliance allows us to look at short-term rentals as they need to adhere to the safety standards and the zoning regulations. And again, as the use has been developed and changed over time, some of the needs for planning for the property and the zoning has changed over time. There's some background on the development of these regulations beginning in February 2022. And in February 2022, several residents, mainly from Overton Fork, came to a board meeting in this room to discuss the need for short-term rental regulations. The board established a work group for those regulations comprised, including of members Chairman Adams and Supervisor Gentry, the current representatives for Lake Anna voting districts. From February through April of 2022, the staff and stakeholders held meetings to draft and provide draft regulations, and those were sent to the Planning Commission for a public hearing in May of 2022. May 2022, the Planning Commission held a work session and a public hearing, and then tabled the item until their June meeting. At the June meeting, the Planning Commission made amendments to the draft regulations and recommended approval with a vote of 5-2. As you know, in July and August, they're one meeting months, so they're advertising criteria we have to work around. September 19th, 2022, the board had this scheduled for a hearing, and before the meeting began, the board tabled the public hearing because of the potential state legislation, the opportunity to have significant changes within 3 months, essentially, of the consideration by the Board of Supervisors. In the interim period, as the General Assembly was beginning to go through pre-filing and get the motions and consider proposed legislation, it was a very busy time, always, Louisa County staff identified an exemption in the draft regulations that could be used as a loophole and worked on an alternative to make those regulations more equitable to folks. And the loophole was that with the creation of a registry or a registration program, those real estate professionals who would be exempt under state code from registering would essentially have the ability to take themselves out of the county system or the county registration program. And that was key, that registration program was key to the draft code amendment. Also, in the General Assembly timeframe, in January 12th, the Attorney General issued an opinion. In this opinion, what we have as A1 and A2 properties, agricultural properties, were declared to be agricultural in nature, which they are. And in this opinion, the Attorney General stated that short-term rentals could be allowed there, and the localities would not have the ability to use the zoning code to regulate that use in the districts. Through the spring and summer of 2023, after the AG's opinion, the General Assembly session, and further discussion with the board's working group, the draft amendments were revised, or the draft amendment was revised. And last month at the Planning Commission on September 14th, the Planning Commission received the draft amendment forwarded to them voted to recommend denial or not recommend approval of the proposed regulations, excuse me, and also recommended an alternative set. That is not your first hearing this evening. Your hearing is on the draft regulations forwarded to the commission, and from the commission, recommendation for denial. In the memo, we've stated some benefits of the proposed ordinance, and these are policy benefits, clear guidelines. So right now, we don't have clear guidelines, and so the creation of an ordinance, in this case, would provide property owners of those who own and operate short-term rentals, of those who adjoin short-term rentals, of those who are interested in buying near short-term rentals, to have clear guidelines for engaging in short-term rental activities. It would protect neighborhoods. I've elaborated on some of that, but ensuring that the rentals contribute positively to neighborhood character and the ambiance. Tourism is promoted by allowing individuals to enjoy our county while promoting tourism businesses. Just a reminder, that's part of what you heard a presentation on a minute ago about the increased interest in folks coming to short-term properties around the country and around the world, but particularly in Louisa County. And then lastly, to enforce safety standards where otherwise we would not be called in to look at safety standards for guests and residents. You received in your packet the draft ordinance, which includes, and this is going to cover 2 slides here, some uses that are by right with restrictions, and these are paraphrased, so they'll track the actual code language. A, that short-term rentals must share their contact information with the county and any governing body of a subdivision if one exists. That would be a HOA, a homeowners association, or a property owners association, a POA, or an HOA. And any contracts, the rental contracts must reference the county's codes for noise and solid waste, and also the zoning code particular to special occasion facilities. That owners must inform tenants that events are banned without conditional use permits. And again, the event is a special occasion facility. Going through these, each bedroom needs 1 parking space. This is an increase from the current requirement of 1 parking space per dwelling unit to 1 parking space per bedroom of a unit of a house. And also that the home would provide 1 additional space, which in this case could be used for a trailer. Septic inspection reports must be shared with the county when requested. Dwellings must meet the state building code and safety regulations. You can answer questions on that if you'd like. And then also, if any of the above requirements are unmet or violated, then a conditional use permit would be required for rental. So that's the concept of by right with restrictions. I'm going to kind of quickly run down a legend, and then put up the map. So the map on the following screen is going to show uses permitted by zoning district from the board's working group amendment. The first is in green, the second in yellow, and the last in red. So in green, A1 and A2, those agricultural zone properties where short-term rentals are allowed by right, based on the Attorney General's opinion, are presented as the field, the majority of Louisa County.
Mr. Gillespie, while you're going through that, because you have a note, don't you have that map that you could
I
put
do.
that map up while you're
I do,
talking
yeah, I
about
can
it?
read,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect.
The yellow are those within growth areas, and I will say on this map, the growth areas, and I directed the creation of this map, so I'm not totally pleased with it's just a graphic for your purpose, but if you look around where the red areas are clustered at Zion Crossroads, Gum Springs, kind of along the interstate, it's probably easiest to see there where there's a red line around those growth areas, and you can see the green areas that include some agriculturally zoned properties inside our growth areas. Those are good examples. The Gum Springs growth area is fairly large, but not a lot that's zoned for something other than agriculture. It's harder to see that in the area around Lake Anna, the areas around Lake Anna, Mineral, Louisa, Gordonsville, but they're there. So that's what those show with the kind of the brownish line. I did not want to put an overlay on here. I thought it was going to be too hard if you put like a mask or a kind of a thick color on top of it. So the yellow shows where there is residential zoning in a growth area. And as I've just said, 2 sort of striking notable exceptions are In the Zion Crossroads growth area, we have a fair amount of land within the growth area shown for low-density residential development over time, which is still zoned agricultural, and within the definition of low-density residential, that agricultural zoning is appropriate. And as you can see, I believe that's Mountain Lake and one of the other subdivisions in that area. Those are essentially what we'd call an agricultural subdivision. It's a large lot, kind of rural residential development. And then lastly, in red, by this proposed amendment would be where a CUP would be required. And those are the properties in the county that are outside of our growth areas, and also those that are zoned residential, R1, R2, or RD, outside of a growth area, and those properties inside of the growth areas that have a non-residential zoning, so industrial and commercial properties. And the basis for that is that those are properties where we want to see industrial and commercial uses, and residential development and short-term rental of a dwelling is not the highest and best use for those properties in the core.
So just to ask the obvious question, the large red area that you see at Lake Anna is Dominion, North Anna, in the zoning around North Anna, correct?
You're right for part of it. So
Dollar General. Dollar General.
it is. It's both of those things. So probably about 2/3 of that is North Anna.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. About 2/3 of that is North Anna, and then when you come to the west, that goes through Haley Drive, which includes the Dollar General commercial development, down the railroad tracks, which has been zoned for industrial development since 1969 in some part of it, difficult properties to access, and then it continues down into some of our other industrial uses on Johnson Road. So that's kind of the tail to the west, if you will, of the big piece that's the power station. Yep.
Okay.
The Planning Commission provided an alternate recommendation, and in this map, you'll see two colors. And actually, you know what, I'm going to step back to this one just for a second. Again, there are two incorporated towns in the county of Louisa. That's the town of Louisa and the town of Mineral. They're colored purple here. There was no reason to put that on the legend, but just in case you wonder, that's the...
Because they have their own zoning.
Correct. I'm sorry. Yes, Mr. Williams, thank you. They have their own zoning and subdivision authority, so they would not be subject to county authority.
Yes.
The Planning Commission provided an alternate recommendation, which was that the use of short-term rental of the dwelling be allowed only by a conditional use permit, excepting those areas in green, which are those areas zoned agricultural, A1 and A2, where by the Attorney General's opinion, it's been determined that the use is allowed by right. And then those areas in red would be those residential R1, R2, and resort district properties outside the growth areas, and the commercial or industrial zone properties inside the growth areas. So you can see, this looks different. The yellow is replaced with red. The same growth area boundaries are still in place. Again, much harder to see because in some cases.
So red is still red, and the yellow has become red.
Correct. I can flip back and forth in these
No,
anytime
I'm
you'd
good.
like, but.
Just being clarifying for everybody.
But since we're talking about color,
Sure.
but the green, which is A1 and A2, based on the Attorney General's ruling,
We can't touch that.
there are, short-term rentals are already a by right use there because it's considered agribusiness and agritourism, correct?
That is correct. We bring this to you with typical evaluation. Again, you have a memo summarizing some of the background and the setup for the development of the draft code. We always relate these to your goals and objectives. So how this ordinance aligns with the county's strategic initiatives and goals is that under the goal of having a comprehensive plan goal for ensuring compatibility between land uses, the short-term rental of a dwelling, short-term rental ordinance will allow the county to regulate the rentals and the non-permitted activities, which would be those events that rise to being a special occasion facility in residential areas where they're not presently permitted as a listed use. The strategic initiative number 2 is to practice good governance, and the county is currently in need of a method to make short-term rentals a permissible activity. This ordinance will allow the county to promote safety as well as to assist with neighbors' concerns. And strategic initiative 4, to strengthen civic partnership. This ordinance addresses many concerns received through the public comment since February 2022, while still allowing homeowner associations and property owner associations the ability to enact their own regulations. You received 2 recommendations on the draft amendments. One is for staff to approve the draft changes from the board's working group. The other is from the Planning Commission, and again, it comes in 2 parts. The first is to not approve the draft changes from the board's working group and recommended the alternative, which was illustrated with the red, which is R1, R2, and RD properties outside the growth areas and the commercially and industrially zoned properties, as well as all the R1, R2 properties would require a conditional use permit. And any questions for me, I'll be happy to answer them now, and of course, I'll be on hand.
Mr. Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Gillespie. So just to clarify, Planning Commission recommendation was that that there would be no by right portion, that everything would have to be CUP, including the ones that already exist?
Just since we're talking about specifics, of course, as Chair Adams said, all the properties that are in green would be by right. Sure. Right, but all those in red would be with conditional use permit.
So my question is this: if you're familiar with my 3-pronged test about passing a new law, it has to be a problem. Do we solve the problem? Is it enforceable? I'm worried about enforcement.
Sure.
So if you're going to try to enforce something like the Planning Commission I'm assuming that the judgment of the staff is that that's not practical, and therefore you're recommending this one. Is that true?
We feel that the by right with restrictions is much more practical, yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. Gillespie? All right, thank you, Mr. Gillespie.
Yes, sir.
We'll probably have more. So, all right, we're going to open the public hearing. And we do have some cards. A lot of cards. Also, before we open the public hearing, these are copies of emails that the board has received that will go into the record of this public hearing, and they'll be part of the official record of the board. Both in favor of the draft work ordinance and opposed to the ordinance. But they will become part of the public hearing, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I have one question. Ms. Snyder, I have 2 cards for you. One you filled out and one you filled out online. You just speaking one time, ma'am?
One for the public hearing, yes.
You're not speaking for a group and yourself or anything, no problem.
Not incorrectly.
I just want, no problem. Thank you. That's all. I'm good.
So when we start the public hearing, this board wants to hear from anybody who wants to speak. Everybody has the opportunity to address their local government. But I will say this. We're going to give you 3 minutes. We'll give you a 15-second warning. At 3 minutes, I'm going to tell you your time is up so that we can be fair to everyone that wants to speak. You know, we have been talking about this for about 18 months. There are about 4 items on the I'm opposed to this and about 4 items on the I support this. So a suggestion, and you do not have to do it, but if you're the 10th person to speak and you agree with what the other 9 people that said before you just said, and you're going to say the exact same thing, you can say your name, you can say your voting district, and you can say, I'm in agreement with the people who spoke, and I either support or oppose this ordinance, and it will get your point across and move you through. Now, having said that, if you want to take your 3 minutes, take your 3 minutes, but that is an option. Somebody asked me that today, and that is an option to do. So when I call your name, and I'm going to kind of put this in a queue so that we can get everybody up here, I'm going to call the first person, and then the next name that I call, if you'll be ready to come up when the first person is finished. And since we spoke to Ms. Snyder, first speaker will be Marie Snyder. If you fill out 2, you get to go first. And the second speaker will be Vicki Hart.
I'm Marie Snyder with the Jackson District. I do want to say one personal thing. Thank you, Mr. Purcell and Mr. Gentry, for your many years of service on the board to the Louisa County citizens. Thank you. Okay. As many of you know, I own a business that relies 100% on the short-term rental industry. I employ about 20 people during the summer and 8 during the off-season. all who work and pay taxes. I've seen my real estate tax bill go up over 20% in the past 2 years. Everything from diapers to gas has increased in price. And it would seem that common sense, that if we've spent 18 months or more on this, that somewhere along those 18 months, there would have been an economic impact study done somewhere to see what an ordinance like this would do to the economic viability and health of the lake. I have not seen that done anywhere. If it has been, somebody please tell me. It seems that everyone related to STRs is being vilified, even the guests. And yes, they are guests of Louisa County. They spend millions of dollars a year so that residents can enjoy a better life here. They frequent our restaurants and bars, grocery stores, they rent boats and jet skis, and as a result, they employ lots of people who can provide for their families. For a moment, let's all picture the lake with no summer jobs, none. My boys all work during the summer. I recall a concern for the county being labor to bring college graduates back and keep high school graduates here. Without them, a town dies. So let's not do that to our county and our youth. Let's all think outside of our own box about the citizens of the entire county, because the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. I support the draft amendment of the short-term rental ordinance that the Louisa County Board sent to the Planning Commission. That version supports the interests of local small businesses, the guests of Lake Anna, short-term owners, and all citizens of Louisa County. Thank you.
Thank you. Vicky Hart, and then in the queue is Kate Killen.
Vicki Hart, Louisa. My only question is the transient occupancy tax going to be applied to these short-term rentals, because it is in many counties and localities in the state of Virginia, and I did not see that in any of the documentation. Thank you.
All right, after Ms. Killam is Tracy Clark.
Well, I guess we all got the message to be brief, and I shall be brief. Thank you very much. I have made my views known.
Kate, name,
Kate
I'm
Killam,
sorry.
Cuckoo District.
Thank you.
I have made my views known last year at Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, and again this year at the Planning Commission. I support the Board of Supervisors draft amendment from the working group. I think that it's enforceable, excellent point on there. It's reasonable for community and guests. It supports our economic infrastructure. It keeps my property values hopefully going up, and keeps other people paying some of the taxes into this county that otherwise I would have to pay. And thank you very much. Less is more. Make
Thank
a
you,
good
ma'am.
decision.
All right. In the queue behind Ms. Clark is Phil Winston.
Mr. Chairman, I believe she represents a group.
She does.
Oh. Can we get, can you give us 5 minutes?
Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm Tracy Clark, the Executive Director of the Louisa County Chamber of Commerce. Our mission is to strengthen and enhance the local business environment, represent the interests of our members, and foster balanced growth in our region. While this is the first time addressing the Board of Supervisors regarding short-term rentals, I participated in the initial work group and addressed the Planning Commission during the May 2022 public hearing with this recommendation. We respectfully request the Planning Commission further investigate the proposed short-term rental guidelines with a work group from across Louisa and Lake Anna consisting of the county, businesses, property managers, independent owners, and HOA and POA representatives, and revisit this matter with more information, potential solutions, and better understanding of a positive path forward. We applaud the ongoing efforts over the last 18 months of the county staff, the Planning Commission, the members of the Board of Supervisors, local businesses, and other stakeholders in their collective commitment to addressing the many complexities of the STRs and their impact on our community. Tonight, as you consider the proposed amendments of Chapter 86, Land Development Regulations, much of my comments from last year remain relevant to tonight's discussion. Tourism is critical to our economy, and the Chamber has been actively promoting Louisa and Lake Anna for several years with support from Virginia Tourism Corporation through the grants and also by collaborating with the Louisa County Parks, Recreation, and Tourism. Our member restaurants, shops, boat rentals, landscapers, cleaning companies, builders, entertainers, breweries, and wineries all credit tourism as a key component to their success. In fact, several businesses stated between 50 and 75% of their annual revenue is directly impacted by tourism. Some would not exist without it. According to the most recent Virginia Tourism Corporation's 2022 Direct Visitor Impact Localities Report, which Wanda shared with you earlier, we have summarized some of the data points directly for Louisa County. Number one, labor income has increased from $11.8 million in 2016 to $14.3 million in 2022. Direct visitor spending, total spending, has increased from $47.4 million in 2016 to $69.3 million in 2022. This is just Louisa County. The composition of spending has also changed. In 2022, the largest portions of spending were on lodging, $23.8 million, and retail, $19.9 million, followed by food and beverage, recreation, and transportation. Local taxes as a percentage of total spending has remained relatively stable over the years, ranging from 0.18% to 0.28%. Excuse me, 0.28%. Our member property management businesses collectively manage almost half the STRs around Lake Anna and maintain as standard practice the adherence to state and local ordinances. The success of their business relies heavily on well-maintained properties, safety guidelines, protection of the property, community support, and sustainability of the lake. Based on input from many independent STRs, they maintain the same standards. Regarding the proposal from the Planning Commission on September 14th, 2023 meeting, their proposed amendment is even more restrictive than the original proposal from 2022, and it now includes conditional use permits for all. The original work group that I participated in agreed conditional use permits would not be the best option for consideration. Further, since this was just presented on the 14th, we feel it would be unwise to proceed with this proposal without work group discussions, including county staff and key stakeholders. The draft amendment presented by the board, while it includes conditional use permits, according to county staff, an estimated 90 to 95% of STRs are within the growth area. Most of the remaining STRs outside the growth area are zoned A1 and A2, which indicates a very small percentage would be required to obtain a conditional use permit.
15
The
seconds.
guidelines, A to J, and in the amendment are in line with property management business current practices and do not impose detrimental restrictions on their business. We encourage the board to approve the July 7th draft amendment, which represents a resolution reasonably. Thank you.
Thank you. Rehearsal time was well spent. You were right on. Next up is Mr. Winston. Behind Mr. Winston is Dennis Wellingsford.
Boy, Mr. Winston, thank you. Philip Winston, I'm in the Mineral District. I've never spoken about STRs. I don't have a short-term rental adjacent to me. Some of my friends and neighbors do. I have many friends in this audience that support the business side. I have many that support the neighborhood side where they're concerned about who's in the house beside them. I think short-term rentals are good for local business. I agree with what Tracy had to say. It's good for sales tax, food tax, boat rental, jet skis, things of that nature. But I have a couple of issues. I think a short-term rental should be a small business. It's a business operated in a home. They should have a business license. And if they're going to do that, they should be paying tax, room tax, the same as a hotel. There's an occupancy tax when I check into a hotel that's paid to a locality. When you go into a short-term rental house, you don't pay that.
They do.
Okay? How is it collected? How do you know that they're renting? I suppose that there are many, many houses that are rented on the lake through whatever means that the county has no idea that they're being rented. None. The other thing that really concerns me that I haven't heard anybody speak about is the drain fields. We have a house that was built as a 3-bedroom ranch that's now a 6-bedroom house that you can put 2 people per room. You put 12 people in, it's got a 3-bedroom drain field. I propose that we should be, if it is a short-term rental, that there should be an inspection required of the drain field and the septic system at that time. And there should be one done on an annual basis also. I also propose that everyone that has a residence in this county should be required at some point in time to have their drain field and/or tank pumped or inspected. Many localities require this, and we don't. We're worried about drain fields. We've talked about drain fields when we talked about the resort. Now we're talking about short-term rentals. We don't even look at drain fields. Hardly ever look at a drain field. You build the house, okay, it's approved. From that point on, you go and do whatever you want to do. Pump whatever you want to as much as you want to. If it overflows, it's your problem. If your drain field quits, it's your problem. But the county doesn't know anything about it. We need to be inspecting these septic systems, in particular the ones where they're being overloaded in rentals.
15.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I will add, just public comment during a public hearing is the public's opportunity to address the board. The board rarely addresses back, but since this issue's been brought up twice, I'm going to address it before we go any further. Of the 460 short-term rentals that are in the county that are registered with the Commissioner of Revenue's office, who all pay transit occupancy tax, those 460, the Commissioner of Revenue's office constantly watches the websites for houses, Vrbo, Airbnb, other rental platforms that are out there. So I just don't want to continue any misconception that short-term rentals don't pay transit occupancy tax. Are there probably a few that don't? Maybe. I mean, probably. But the vast majority do. The county does track that through the Commissioner of Revenue's office. So in the queue is Susan O'Neill. Mr. Wellingsford.
Dennis Wallingsford. I live in an R2 district, and I read the present code. The residential general district is composed of certain quiet, low-density residential uses, plus certain open areas where similar development appears likely to occur. The regulations of these districts are designed to stabilize and protect the essential characteristics to promote and encourage a suitable environment for family life where there are children, and to prohibit activities of a commercial nature. The present ordinances don't allow commercial activity in R districts, and STRs are clearly a commercial entity. The zoning proposal would have allowed by right STRs. This contradicts the present code and does not solve the problem. It exacerbates it. The previous zoning proposals would also not have put any limit on occupancy based on the septic system. And I attended the Planning Commission hearing, and they came up with a compromise. They were going to do the design 2 per bedroom plus 2 more. So there was some give and take, and that seemed to be well received at that meeting, but it hasn't been mentioned at this one. Henrico County requires a conditional use permit for any rentals that rents to more than 6 occupant rentals, or if a total number of days per year exceeds 60. Buying a house there solely for the purpose of being a short-term rental and not living in it while using it is not permitted. And the Planning Commission also talked about Bedford and Franklin counties, which abut Smith Mountain Lake. They have rules which prohibit advertising by STRs for a greater number of renter occupants than the drain field is designed to accommodate. For example, 3-bedroom drain field would be maximum 6 people. Doesn't it just make common sense that you don't promote and allow blatant overuse of a septic system? In 1787, our founding fathers wrote and signed the entire U.S. Constitution in less than 4 months. It's been more than a year and a half since this STR subject was brought before the Board of Supervisors. After numerous discussions, meetings, delays, speakers, letters, emails, there's still no change. I believe that there is useful information from the Planning Commission that could be incorporated in a compromise that would work for everybody. And I think that should be considered. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. In the queue is Ryan Underwood.
Nope, Susan O'Neill.
No, you're
You're next. He's in the queue.
Oh, he's cute.
Yeah.
And I'm,
You're next. You're up.
in 5 minutes.
Who are you representing?
Wildwood Property Owners Association Board of Directors, I'm secretary.
She sure is, according to the paper.
Hold on.
Nailed it.
You get 5 minutes.
Good job.
I'm watching.
Scott,
She ain't gonna start till she gets her
Scott,
five.
give us some.
Come on, fine.
You could probably get some, you might get 5.5.
Keep it up and I'll ask for it.
Hold on.
So, there we go.
There we go. I'm Susan O'Neill, Secretary of Wildwood on Lake Anna Property Owners Association, and have been for 38 years or more. When we bought in Wildwood, and when Wildwood was developed in about 1975, I'm not sure what the developers were doing, but if you look at our zoning map, part of our subdivision is zoned residential, part of it is zoned agricultural. We even have one lot that's half and half. It's crazy. So can you imagine what this type of regulation is gonna do in Wildwood? We're not even sure where to go from there. So the mixed zoning is creating an issue. The board was advised that there are several properties coming up for sale, and a concern not only of the people who are selling, because we're one big family. They don't want their houses being sold for STRs, but they know that the developers are coming in and they're offering big money to buy a house, and for the sole purpose of turning it into an STR. They're buying up properties to build houses, to turn them into STRs. So we're concerned about that because we think it's gonna be destroying residential communities, turning them into mini motels. I had the fortune recently to visit Amsterdam. I've only been back 2 weeks. Imagine my surprise when I was on a canal boat based on tourism. This man's money is based on tourism. Was complaining on the boat, almost fell off, about all of the short-term rentals, they were calling Airbnb, in Amsterdam have caused a housing shortage, residential housing shortage, because of the developers buying up these homes, turning them into STRs. Amsterdam is putting into place next year a restriction that if you buy a residential property and can afford to, you have to live in it 5 years before you're allowed to rent it out. Coincidentally, I get home, I open up an old issue of Richmond Times-Dispatch that came while we were gone. Richmond is also having a problem with ownership and overdevelopment of short-term rental properties. I'm not against short-term rentals. I'm just against overtaking residential communities, causing housing shortage, affordable housing, and it's creating neighborhood issues. So Richmond is putting in place that the STRs are gonna have to be your primary residence before you're allowed to rent them out. You can only rent them out for a certain number of days a year. I would like for Louisa County to put a restriction on the number of short-term rentals, or at least try to control it in some way that residents don't become, in Louisa and around the lake, do not become an Outer Banks. I don't think anybody in Louisa County wants it to be an Outer Banks. I don't want to hurt Marie Snyder's business or the realtors or the developers. I think that it's good for Louisa, I've got a lot of time left. I think it's good for Louisa County to have the influx of all of the people coming in, the revenue, the wineries and all of that. I think that's great. I came from Fairfax County. I don't want to die in Fairfax County. And that's what this is quickly becoming. And the people in Amsterdam, we met some people on a tram, and they were walking us around, and they said, we live up there, but we don't know how much longer we can stay in our condo because, or they refer to it as their flat, our apartment, because we're getting priced out. The developers are paying enormous prices. They have canals, as you all know, and they've put houseboats on the canals. You used to be able to get a permission slip to put your canal houseboat, less than $100. They're no longer issuing any of those, but you have the right to transfer your slip. You know how much the slips are selling for? Anywhere from $200,000 to $800,000, because they're putting houseboats in these slips. How much farther is it going to be
15
before that happens on Lake Anna? Floating STRs. Please consider that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Underwood, and then in the queue, let us get back to 3 minutes, sir, is John Wayne. Did you bring your son?
No, I
Yeah,
didn't.
okay.
School night.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Ryan Underwood. I vote in the Mineral District. A lot of great points already said, so I'm going to try to just get through a few of the notes I had. I found a study that UCLA did that said a 10% increase in rental listings increased the price of nearby homes by 1%. And so I think we've seen, I mean, Airbnb alone has seen almost 1,000% increase in listings in this area in the past 10 years. So there's the doubling of my property values, which I'm not super ecstatic to pay taxes on for the rest of my life. Every single waterfront house near me that's sold has become rental, which is fine. I mean, plenty of good people putting some money into the local economy so that I can enjoy the wineries and the restaurants and the rest of the stuff that's here. But it's not great for the community, and it's not great for the safety and the transient occupancy of the people coming in. There's dogs running down the streets that don't belong to anybody that live there. There's kids. There's teenagers and young adults making noise into the wee hours of the mornings. There's 3 times the number of boat traffic amount of boat traffic in my cove, and there's 3 people on a 3-person jet ski pulling a 3-person tube. They're coming here, you're gonna ask them to give them a list of things they can't do, like have a wedding, but nobody's saying anything about how to behave on the lake. And that's the majority of where these activities are being rented. So there's a lot of these rentals, I don't actually know if it's a lot, but there are definitely rentals for sale today that were built before the 100% repair area requirement of the drain fields. So 2 or 3 bedroom houses that do not have a spot to put an additional drain field when they eventually fail, which they will if people use them the way that people park on top of them. People put 17 people in a house that's got 3 bedrooms. I don't know if it's the house that Mr. Winston was mentioning, but there's a 3-bedroom house listed as a 6-bedroom. Now, I'd like to add a couple of bedrooms to my house, but I can't do that because I don't have the room. I've got a 4-bedroom perk, and I got a 4-bedroom area. I can't just go add 2 bedrooms. But if I rent it, I can just call those 2 extra rooms bedrooms and rent it as if it's an 8-bedroom house. That doesn't seem right. That's proof by contradiction. And as the Planning Commission mentioned, a couple other minor things, the safety, I'm concerned for the safety. I've personally rented a house on this lake for my business that had a bedroom that was essentially a closet. That was on the Spotsy side, fortunately for us. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. 5 minutes, Scott. Behind,
Mr. Chairman, I'm just taking 3.
Oh, okay,
I'm
fine.
speaking for me tonight.
okay, hold on, John. Behind Mr. Wayne is Lance Lutschwager? Close, maybe?
Maybe.
Okay.
I'm John Wayne. I live in the Mineral District, and I normally speak for LACA, but we have someone else speaking for LACA tonight, our president. I've been involved in this debate for 18 months. I had written down 2 years, but you corrected me. It's only been 18 months. It seems like longer than that. And I'm going to take your advice and do in some of what I had to say. It seems to me that this is kind of where we are. The CUP is problematic. Just thinking about getting through 490 of these things is, a daunting thought just to begin with. And the only problem that I really have with the working group ordinance, draft ordinance is that it doesn't specifically address occupancy, and that's something that's been proven that needs to be addressed, or people just don't seem to get it. I believe that what this debate really should be about is expectations. People who bought homes in an R1 or R2 zone neighborhood did not have the expectation that there were going to be 15 or 20 people living next to them off and on throughout the summer. That wasn't supported by the code when they bought it. It's not supported by the code today. Neither was this supported when individuals and corporations bought those houses and decided to make them short-term rentals and increase those occupancies to the levels that we're seeing, ignoring building codes and septic permits and those sorts of things. And now we're going to make it okay. That just doesn't seem right. VDH has the expectation that a house issued a 4-bedroom perk or a 4-bedroom septic permit has 8 people in it. If the occupancy was going to be a lot more, they would have required a different design on the septic system. When Louisa Fire and Rescue shows up for an emergency in a 4-bedroom house, their expectation is not that there are 20 people hanging out in that house. If it was, they would have forced probably a fire suppression system to be built and included in that house when that house was built. It seems to me that this debate's gotten a little bit off track. Failing septic systems, falling home prices, falling tax rates, failing businesses. If you go back to what everyone's expectations are or should have been in neighborhoods that are zoned R1 and R2 based on existing code, it's residential, not over-occupied STRs. Keep these businesses, and they are businesses operating, keep them residential. The Lake Anna economy is not going to falter if you codify these expectations. If we're going to make STRs by right, there needs to be occupancy limits. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, Mr. Lutz-Wagner, are you here? Pardon me? He's not here. Okay. Luann Pavko? And in the queue is Sandra Brockle.
Thank you. Luann Pafko, Cuckoo District. I want to state for the record that I am in support of the draft amendment for short-term rental. I am a short-term rental owner. I take into consideration all of the existing rules that exist as a resident of Louisa County. The noise ordinance, how do we get rid of waste, the occupancy, the septic tank. There are already rules in place that demand how we as residents occupy our homes. There should be no difference in rules for someone who chooses to short-term rental their home so that they can be able to retire here when they're done with their employment and come and enjoy all of the features. Short-term rentals allow, as we talked about, tax revenue, jobs, things that support the infrastructure that allows us who live here all year round enjoy. So for the record, I just want to state that myself and a number of short-term rental owners who rent their homes themselves, not through property rental, not through corporations who buy homes, do it with specific worries about our neighbors, about the safety, and about the lake. And the last thing that I want to say here is if we really are concerned about drainage fields and septic tanks failure impacting the beauty and the life of the lake, then the rule should be applied to every single homeowner. The home next to me is a full-time resident. They often have parties that include lots of people on their lawn. They overuse their septic systems, yet no rule is going to be applied to them over and above the occupancy permit when they bought their home. But as a short-term rental, I'm going to have over and above that I have to do. Everybody in Louisa County needs to abide by the rules that are already in place. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. In the queue is Robert Soderholm.
I'm Sandra Brockle, Cuckoo District. I can't add anything more than what the others in support of the working group's draft, so I'm not going to spend any more time on it. Thank you.
God bless you. In the queue, Paul Snyder.
Good evening. My name is Robert Soderholm, and I'm in support. I support what many here have said before. I support the draft amendment. I own a short-term rental in Louisa. It is on the private side of the lake. It is waterfront. I built the home myself. It's my retirement home, and I look forward to retiring in it one day. I'm just too young to do it. I'm letting other people pay for my retirement. I'm investing in this county. I chose Louisa County. My family's been boating since my wife and I got married. We celebrate 25 years this year. Our 3 kids have grown up at the lake. We chose Louisa County to build our home. I pay for linen services, a woman-owned small business. Cleaning services from a small woman and minority-owned business. Maintenance by an employee that has a disability. I wouldn't be able to provide those jobs and that inject into the community without that rental revenue. I run it as a business. I own other businesses, and I treat it like a business. I pay my short-term occupancy tax, and I also pay my county taxes. Everyone's benefiting from the STR market. Let's take a look at Smith Mountain Lake. Franklin County, Bedford County, they both touch Smith Mountain Lake. Franklin County has decided to ban STRs, put limits on them. What has happened? There's a 20 to 30% lower value of homes in that county. They've got to put the burden of that tax onto the backs of the other residents. It's not a wealthy county. I support the draft amendment. The drain field issue is a red herring. There's no empirical evidence. I think there's only one short-term rental that's actually had a failed drain field. That was a home that was built over 30 years ago, and it was built poorly to begin with, and it's been rectified. It's not my home. I don't even know where it is. But where's the where's the evidence? You know, where's the evidence? I already abide by all the rules that are in this this proposed draft amendment. I'm already doing that, and I've gotten my septic tank taken care of and gotten semi-annual.
15 seconds.
Yeah, every other year I get a report on it. So, thanks very much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Is that it?
That's on the residents.
All right.
Yeah, I saw you. I got you. Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. My name is Paul Snyder, and I live in the Jackson District. First and foremost, I would like to voice my support for the draft amendment tonight as written. Specifically, after hearing many things talked of tonight, item number F, the dwelling shall comply with all applicable state building codes and safety regulations. And let me state that I have always been a proponent of safety regulations. I have stood before the Board of Supervisors over 20 years talking of regulations in the capacity of the building official, acting planning director, and acting zoning administrator. In fact, the first time I addressed the board, the only member that was there that's still here is Fitz. And Fitz, neither one of us had gray hair at that time. But as I look back through, for instance, the septic regulations are already regulated by the State Health Department. The building code occupancy and occupant loads of structures are already regulated by the building code. So those are things that I don't feel the county should jump into and create new regs for. I think this amendment addresses that appropriately. The other thing that I would like to say is over the 20-plus years that I've addressed the board in various capacities, from interpreting code, building code, offering interpretations from staff on the zoning ordinances, there have been several common themes that I've seen regardless of who sits in those chairs. And those themes have been, one, less government, less governance, less restrictions, less big brother on the citizens of the community, on the citizens of Louisa County. Another one is selective enforcement was an absolute no-no. Any regulation or ordinances put into place should not adversely target a group or favor a group. What's fair for one is fair for all across the county. And the board has been consistent in that for over 20 years, regardless of who sits there. And I've always appreciated that. And I would appreciate that same action and thought of mine again tonight. Again, I support the amendment and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Okay, so we still have some cards, but our bylaws require us to recognize Louisa County residents before we recognize people who aren't, when I think by and large we just did that. So before I move on to people outside the county, are there any other Louisa County residents that would wish to address this public hearing?
Full-time or part-time? Full-time.
Full-time. Do we have a card for you?
We do. I have Mr. Ainsworth's cards, and he's in the non-resident
Okay.
pile.
Yes, ma'am.
It's a good question, Mark.
Good evening. My name is Valerie Bagby. I'm with the Mineral District. I spoke at both of the Planning Commission meetings about some of my concerns with STRs in my neighborhood. I must have an exception to the rule of what I've heard tonight. I have 8 STRs. Every one of them are over their septic limitation and their bedroom limitation. Smith Mountain Lake was brought up. Yes, both counties have good ordinances, I think from an STR perspective and from a citizen's perspective. Bedford County has been at this for over 10 years. They continue to make improvements, which I hope if you adopt an ordinance here tonight, you do the same. I think there will need to be continuous improvement over any ordinance. Bedford County has realized, look at the advertisements and then compare that to the legal documents, and it tells a story, and a powerful story that nobody can deny. I have 3 STRs next door to me. Over the past year, there has been 800 people that have come through those 3 STRs. I thought when I moved into my residential neighborhood and what a residential neighborhood meant, I would have about 20 neighbors in those 3 STRs. And I would get to know those neighbors. I'd even lend them some sugar or coffee. That is not what's happening. My neighborhood has well over 2,000 STR people showing up annually. Do we know these people? No. At the end of the day, I'm not saying no STRs. I am saying there are legal governing documents that every home has, citizens and STR owners. Those legal governing documents, a certificate of occupancy issued by Louisa County with the number of bedrooms, a VDH permit listed with the number of bedrooms and the gallons per day, should not be discarded. Those documents were created for a purpose, to ensure communities, neighbors, people that build homes understand what they should be doing. And I feel the education is lacking. I came from Northern Virginia. When I got down here and started talking with people about septic, I was like, I don't understand why you don't understand. Septic is different than public water.
15 seconds.
Please adopt an ordinance with some restrictions with some oversight to ensure compliance occurs in these Lake Anna residential neighborhoods that are being overoccupied, at least in my neighborhood. Thank you.
Ma'am, what neighborhood do you live in?
I live in Freshwater Estates.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there any other, yes, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah, you come on up. Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I appreciate your time this evening. I'm really surprised to see the
Name and voting district.
Anthony Carter Mineral District.
Thank you.
Patrick Henry, Louisa, Gum Springs.
I live in but
Faircliff.
one, sir.
I got kids. I'm really concerned at the number of local residents that aren't out here tonight. So I don't usually public speak, but I figured I needed to. I'm sixth generation Louisa County citizen. I have two young boys who run a lawn care business. My wife is in real estate. We own rental properties. We, as I said before, we have land in each one of the districts. I'm concerned at the overlay. I like what the board has presented, but we have land on Centerville Road at Ferncliff that would require a conditional use permit. I think it needs to be delved into a little bit more with the overlay district, not just a map. But to keep it short, increase the transient tax, some form of registration for these SDRs, less government. Seems to be a lot of people agreeing on that on both sides of this tonight. And enforcement will be a nightmare as former code enforcement officer for Louisa County. Y'all have a lot of work cut out in front of you. We appreciate your time. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Anybody else, a Louisa County resident that would wish to address the board? All right, I'm going to move into. Yep, yes, come on. Good. Wait till you get, it's just for the record, so that.
I'm Tommy Harrell, Bumpus area. I moved here 3 years ago. Was with the state for 5 years as a superintendent. Decided I wanted to get out of politics, moved to the lake because there was some money involved. You take this away, you're taking away a lot of jobs. You're gonna have a lot of kids sitting in their homes. What do we want our kids to do now? We want our kids to get out, work, become somebody. A lot of people, I know Marie, have a lot of kids working for them. They come to rental houses that I manage. They work hard. They make an honest living. They're not on the streets selling drugs. They're not sitting at home playing video games. I manage a boat rental business. I have high schoolers. I have college people come work for me. Taking this stuff away from the lake as far as the business, you're taking away from, educating kids other than school. You say something about dogs in your neighborhood, there's dogs everywhere. I live in the country, there's dogs everywhere. There's little things you can nitpick about renters, there's little things you can do, it's all common sense. But the fact of it is you take all this away, you're taking away livelihood, people feeding their kids, people, living here. If you don't like it here and it's overpopulated, move. If you like the water, go build a house and put a pond on it. It's that simple. But you are at a very nice place at the lake that God has given us, and let everybody be happy. So y'all have a blessed night.
Thank you. Actually, maybe Dominion gave us the lake, but we won't argue with that. Do I have a hand? Yes, ma'am.
My name's Karen Cheatwood. I live in the Cuckoo District. You've all gotten emails from me over time. My thing is that short-term rentals need to be managed, and saying that it's not enforceable or conditional use permits are a lot is not a good reason to not do something. I have a neighbor. I've spent thousands of dollars putting up a fence because I walked onto my dock and his renters are on my dock. That's just one example. I have to tell them to move their vehicles to get out of my driveway. So whatever we do, we need to have rules and be able to enforce them. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, anybody else? Oh, Mr. Snyder.
Thank you, Mr. Snyder. Yes, I'm Jimmy Snyder. I'm from the Mineral District. I'm also a local Lake Anna realtor, so I deal with a lot of the people buying at the lake. I do support the board's working group. I have friends on both sides of the aisle. I love all of you, I promise. The clients that I represent, half of them are retirees from Northern Virginia that want to just buy a house down here and live, and half are short-term rentals. Majority of the short-term rentals, like another gentleman spoke, they're just renting until they're able to retire and buy. Now, that's not across the board, but that's a big set of clientele that we see. So I do support it. Rentals are a big deal at Lake Anna, and I believe we do all benefit from it. But those that are opposing, I love you all equally, I promise. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any other residents? I still have some additional out-of-the-county cards, so. Mr. Baker.
In the queue.
And Scott, we need 5 minutes. In the queue would be Daniel Taylor. Yes, sir.
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. I passed around a deck earlier. I hope you have it, and if you don't mind flipping through with me as we go. I think
what? Hold on.
Coming to you right now.
it's coming to you now. So I'm the president of the Lake Anna Civic Association. We represent over 800 families here at the lake. And at the core of what we do, we're an environmental advocacy group. I want to make something absolutely clear. We are not against short-term rentals. Our mission statement is to preserve and protect the cleanliness and beauty of the lake through advocacy and education, et cetera. That's why I'm here tonight. We all know about the harmful algae blooms. Algae blooms are caused by excessive nutrients of nitrogen and phosphorus, primarily from agricultural and stormwater runoff, but also from wastewater and septic discharge. If you flip the page to the VDH warnings, we've obviously had 6 years straight of the upper lake being shut down for no swim advisories. That can't be good for our economy. It can't be good for the short-term rentals. As an advocacy for environmental safety or environmental cleanliness of the lake, that's what I'm here to talk about. So I want to talk about some facts, and these are undisputed. Excessive phosphorus and nitrogen cause HABs. Overcapacity of septic systems release phosphorus and nitrogen. A septic system does not need to fail to release excessive phosphorus and nitrogen. In fact, they don't treat phosphorus and nitrogen, they treat bacteria in E. coli. The upper lake of Lake Anna is hypertrophic in phosphorus. That means it's very, very badly polluted, and it's getting worse year over year. The volume of water that goes into a septic system must come out the other end. If we're over capacity, we're putting way too much water into the septic tank that actually does not get treated and goes out the other end into the drain field. So failed septic systems are not an indicator of whether or not septic systems are polluting the lake. Let's go to the science, and these are quotes from the academic community that studies septic systems. Excessive nitrogen and phosphorus degrade water quality. They feed algal blooms that block sunlight to underwater grasses and suck up the life-supporting oxygen when they die and decompose. That's Chesapeake Bay Foundation. Lake communities serviced by septic systems are responsible for 20 to 45%. The mean is 30% of total annual phosphorus loads. Dr. Stephen Souza. Septic systems affluence has been largely ignored contributor of HABs. Dr. Brian LaPointe. The excess nitrogen from septic pollution leads to toxic algae blooms, which can choke out beneficial aquatic species, undermine fishing seasons, and damage tourism economies. Dr. Madeline Brewing. The science is very clear. Overloading septic systems puts too much wastewater and too much into the septic systems and help cause them fail. Our recommendation is very simple. No matter what you decide, whether it's the CUP route, any route, it has to include occupancy levels. That's our most important focus. Both Bedford and Franklin counties around Smith Mountain Lake, as you've heard earlier, have those in place. And finally, this is not Greg Baker speaking. I want to just take off my president hat for just a second. When I bought my house in 1993, I couldn't afford a house at Lake Anna. I too rented my house well before there was hardly an internet back then. Certainly nothing like an Airbnb and a VRBO, but I can tell you not once did we knowingly rent over capacity of our three-bedroom septic system. And the one time we did find out, my father and I showed up and we escorted them off the property. So it's about being kind to your neighbors as well as taking care of the lake. And finally, the last page of my presentation is, I'm not doing this in a vacuum, guessing what our members represent. We had over 425 folks respond to our survey out of our 800+ members. 91% of those members expect the counties, both Spotsylvania and Louisa, to do something about maintaining or controlling occupancy in short-term rentals. Thank you very much.
In the queue is Colin Henley.
If you'll give a little bit of time for the interpretation to happen.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. My name is Danny Taylor. I work for the United States Postal Service, and I need a second job. See, I have a wife. She's deaf. Her 2 kids have special needs. I used to work at a farm. They took advantage of me. They didn't pay me very well. 3 years ago, I started working here in Louisa, working at a short-term rental, and working at that place helps me to pay my bills. I work for Bobby and another guy that owns a short-term rental named Tony. I do yard work. I fix their boats. I fix things in their homes. I can fix anything. I get paid more now, and I work less now. I have good communication with those owners, Bobby and Tony. Also, even during the winter time, I get work. They're investing in the homes, and they have me fix things. I like my job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. In the queue is Melissa Morelli, maybe?
Hello, my name is Colin Henley, and I live in Spotsylvania County. So I own Bodo Rentals. We deliver rental boats to vacation properties, and I started it up 3 years ago when I graduated from college back in 2020. So it's really been my pride and joy since then. And about at least 40% of my business comes from mineral. All right, so that's at a low value. So I'd say it's probably more realistically between 40 and 70%, somewhere in that range. I kind of want to talk a little bit about why it matters about what we do here at the lake and what I do. So I meet these short-term rentals. I meet them every day. I'm on the ground. I deliver the boats. I talk to them, shake hands with them. 99% of them are just families there for a good vacation, and they're well-behaved, and they treat my boats really well. So I want to talk about the reason that I do this, and the reason that I do this is because at the end of the day, when I pick up the boat and I get on the phone with these customers and I ask them about how their rental experience was, they tell me about the times that they went fishing with their grandsons, or they tell me about the times whenever they were pulling their son on the tube and they had just a tremendous experience because of what these short-term rentals are able to provide the customers that come down. So these short-term rentals enable me to do business. And secondly, I want to talk about my employees. So I have employees here who live in Louisa, who live in Spotsylvania, just around the lake. And what I'm able to do with them is able to help shape their professionalism, help shape their future, and also help them understand what it is that they want to do when they get older. So with them, I've already helped some start up a gutter cleaning business, then also a mobile winterization business. And those are just my employees that I'm helping out of my own will. So with that, I do support the draft amendment of the working group. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. And in the queue is Bill Colbert.
is Melissa Morelli. I own a short-term rental, and it's actually not in Louisa, it's Spotsylvania, but if I had a good arm, I could throw that cup of sugar across to my neighbor on the water. I agree with everything Luann said, Marie, and everyone else in support of the amendment. But something has come to light, and also, there's several people in Louisa in this room that I use their businesses or employ them, or they help me with everything from maintenance. It's a large home, and it's also a venue for weddings and events. And I've had, in 13 years of that property, there's never been a problem. We're on a point with about 9 other houses, couple rent, couple don't. But when I feel for the neighbors and people that are having problems, because in California, I had an Airbnb, we had situations, or in our neighborhood, and we did have situations, but a lot of it was because of not pride of ownership. Who owns the house? Who, if you're not vetting your people and you're not, and you don't care, then yeah, you're gonna let people trash your place. I can't even imagine it. It's a home that will eventually retire there. We do live there because it's big enough that part of it we can stay when we want, and have gotten to know the same families come year after year, and it's wonderful. And all of them, some neighbors, like I said, rent, some don't, but we don't have the problems. And I think a lot of it has to do with how, you know, the people take care of their property. So if you went to your neighbor and said, hey, your people are on my dock, or these problems they're having, that's who they need to communicate with, because I don't think you guys could all go out and police people's houses. So I agree with how it's, because there's a lot of problems, but it's within your own neighborhood. So that person that owns that house is probably gonna be a crappy neighbor anyway, if that's how they treat the property and when they are there. And that, even if it's just that 3 or 4 months a year. So, that's it.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, in the queue is Mark Ainsworth.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Bill Colbert, and I own an STR in the Cuckoo District. My wife and I are responsible STR owners, and we've now owned our STR for about 6 years. And one of our neighbors actually says that our renters improve his social life. He enjoys the folks that we have there. They are responsible with our house. We are responsible with our house. We've invested a lot of money in making sure that our septic field, which is our most important asset, is always well maintained. We have water limitation devices on every toilet, every faucet, and we have signs posted all over the house to make sure that our guests treat our septic field carefully and treat it well as it is their own. As it relates to HAB, I disagree with Mr. Baker in that I've yet to see any data that really shows that STRs contribute to the HAB situation in the lake. And I support the draft amendment and ask that you all vote yes and pass that forward. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. In the queue is Susie Squires.
Hello, I'm Mark Ainsworth. I am a part-time resident here. I live here more than I don't, but I rent my house more than most people on the lake do. I'm just going to read off some numbers here. 20,000 to Beth Tally Home Cleaning, 700 to Squeegee Clean Window Service, 12,000 to Lakeside Paint and Stain, 4,000 to Lakeside Lawn Care, 1,000 to Valet Trash Pickup, 500 to Louisa Appliance Repair, 12,000 to Lloyd's Heat and AC, and 35,000 to All-In Septic Services. They all got a piece of 85 grand of my money this last 12 months just to maintain my house and to get it in compliance with what has been going on for the last 18 months. I'm the lone guinea pig in the county that's put in the most ridiculously overpriced septic system ever known to man to try to comply with the last idea that was going to be 3 people to a bedroom. I got a 6-bedroom perk with an alternative system. I am a responsible, caring, short-term rental, and I'm proud to be one. 19 years ago this week, I met with Tony Williams to build me my dream home to retire in. He built the most beautiful home on the lake. I have 6 more years to go. I'm begging you to not walk through the stupid door and kill the golden goose that laid the golden egg. I support the Board of Supervisors draft amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. In the queue is John Romano. I think I had somebody up, did I not? Susie Squires, is she here? Is John Romano here? No, he's not here. All right. Colin Henley. You already spoke. I was gonna say, I recognize your name. So I have no more cards.
Oh.
Is there anyone else that would wish to speak? Yes, I see you, ma'am. Yes.
I have my magic wand or my straw, whatever.
I had mine. I still have mine.
Apologize because I know I'm keeping everybody here. So my name is Sylvie Thompson. I'm in the Cuckoo District. I've been a part-time resident since 2004. We built our house in 2004, and we have always rented it when we are not there. And I have followed this process, and I came just to listen. And I think the one thing that stood out to me this evening is that there is a tremendous amount of misinformation and misunderstanding in this county. And when we talk about the value of tourism, maybe instead of spending some of those dollars trying to get 1 or 2 more tourists here, we should maybe spend some of those dollars educating people. Trespassing is trespassing. I don't care who it is. Noise ordinance applies to everybody. If somebody's karaokeing at 2 o'clock in the morning, which by the way has happened in my house, in my neighbor's house, not mine, it's call the police. None of this matters. All the septic systems, it's like somehow if it's my family member, the bio-waste doesn't count. But if it's a guest, the bio-waste suddenly has some magic power that becomes highly toxic. Like, all of it is just so but you realize listening is people honestly believe their arguments. They honestly believe that all of these terrible things are happening versus really understanding the value that this has brought. One of the things I did notice throughout this entire process is this concept of going after the owners. As I said, I have rented my house since 2006 when we got our occupancy permit. I went through 2 local realtor agencies. I don't do it. I've spent the last 12 years doing it direct myself. Why? Because despite setting an occupancy limit, those agencies repeatedly rented my home for more people than I let them, and I got calls from friends and neighbors. And when I called those agencies to ask why there were more people in my house than I said I would permit, I got because they will pay more money. The problem you have is that this entire system is built around more revenue. Everybody is taking a percentage of the top. So if I can put 14 people in instead of 10, I make more money. If I tell you to turn a bedroom with 1 queen bed into a bedroom with 2 doubles, now I can put 4 people in a 2-bedroom and I make more money. Not only does the agency make more money, but guess what? So does the linen company, because now they get to charge me for 2 sets of sheets in the same room. It is a constant spiral. Maybe instead of going after the homeowners who are trying to abide by all the rules, maybe it's time to look at the other agencies. 2 years ago, I bought a parcel of land directly across. The septic systems I've been talking to, all of them have told me to violate the rules. Do not build a system that matches your house. There's all sorts of ways around it. Everybody is designed to get around the rules. Maybe it's time to go after them and leave us owners alone.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak? Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Matt Webb. I have a short-term rental in Spotsylvania County. I've owned for 4 years now and started renting the very first year. I wanted to bring to light the very specific details of our septic system. It's a 4-bedroom. We do offer more guests than 8. We offer 15. Our very first summer there, we ran into issues where we set off the septic alarm, so I, being 2 hours away, rushed down and started assessing that situation. And very quickly after that, put in low flow everything, toilets, shower heads, and started to minimize my septic usage. But I took it a step beyond that. I went and, per the septic, my septic guy's recommendation, I put in water meters, and I started tracking how much water usage we had every day. So far as everything I've seen, a 4-bedroom septic would allow 600 gallons per day. So I said to all my guests, you have 600 gallons a day. And now with the technology that we have today, I have a device that lets me know when my guest hits 500 gallons. And as of 3 years now, I've had that notification once. So I don't believe that the septic systems are a problem. I think that I would recommend to all my short-term rental owners here that they do consider putting in a water meter. I think it's a very easy solution to track. I'm actually in the process of working on logging that so that I can keep track and prove that our daily usage is well below what our system can handle. In addition, I've also added monitoring systems on the septic system because last year we had an issue where the pump that pumps out our septic tank pipe broke and it set off the alarm. Of course, with the water usage, it didn't indicate. So I took it another step. And these are very simple technology add-ons that anybody can do. And I would highly recommend, people consider that. And I do support the proposal here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right, anyone else wish to address the board? Going once? Going twice? All right, and we'll close the public hearing, bring this back to the board. Mr. Purcell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This morning, I got to the office. I pulled restrictive covenants on 3 subdivisions that I've been involved with over the last 20 years. Restrictive covenants are designed to have a HOA or otherwise committee that looks at all the people coming into the neighborhood and has a set of rules. Covenant number 1 in every single one of those neighborhoods. I wrote it down. No lot shall be used for any purpose other than residential use. Covenant 1. So what does that have to do with the discussion tonight? Well, what restrictive covenants do is a couple things. They're filed in the clerk's office. They're a legally binding document. They go with the land. They allow you to sue on them, which means if you're an adjoining property owner or otherwise owner of a lot in the neighborhood and someone's in violation of the restrictive covenants, you can file not just to place liens on the property, but you can recover attorney's fees or damages. There's lots of teeth that you can put in them. They're different, often, depending on what neighborhood you're in. And it may very well be the case that some of these neighborhoods at the lake were done long ago and the covenants are either non-existent or don't have such provisions in them. But restrictive covenants also provide a methodology where they can be amended to include those things. And that provides mechanisms of enforcement that are much more practical than, in my opinion, what the Planning Commission recommended. But what we have before us tonight is what the county staff has proposed. So I'm going to make the motion to adopt that. But before I do, I want to say to you all that I do hear what you're saying about some people being a problem in these neighborhoods. And what I've just told you, if you don't think the county ordinance goes far enough or you don't think it has enough teeth, there are provisions that you can have, and there are provisions at law that you can apply that allow you to deal with that problem in a way that will hopefully solve your issue. But I think as a starting point, it would be impractical to do what the PC recommended for a number of reasons, enforcement being one. And I am going to make the motion that we adopt the draft ordinance from the county.
Hold on 1 second for me, Ken.
Yep. But that's my motion.
All right, is there a
Second for discussion.
All right, now we have
I have
discussion.
a question for Josh.
Sure. Mr. Gillespie?
We've heard a lot about occupancy tonight. Can you tell me, is occupancy by Code of Virginia different for short-term rentals as it is for private residential homes, or is it the same once you have a occupancy permit per Code of the Virginia?
For a residence built as a residence, it's essentially being used as a short-term residency, which, again, by rental of less than 30 days makes it a short-term rental. But whether it's 2 days or 32 days, it's still a short-term residential occupancy. So as long as the building isn't,
People in it. So if it's.
as long as the building isn't being used for something differently than it was designed for example, the closet or some other use that was not a bedroom, then no, the occupancy rates don't change.
So the Code of Virginia covers, so whether you're a resident or have a short-term rental and it's a 4-bedroom home, it's still a 4-bedroom home
Correct, as a residential structure.
as a residential structure.
Mr. Williams.
I have several questions. The first one I'm going to pose to the county attorney. I like to feel like my grasp of the English language is pretty reasonable. But I'm going to read you H. It says, a violation enforced under this section shall be in lieu of any criminal penalty except as provided in exception 8611 and 86-11.1. That's kind of confusing to me. What can we make that a little more clear? I mean, is it a misdemeanor, or are you going to jail? What does that mean? I just don't understand what that means.
So you are requesting that essentially what?
I'm trying to understand what H means. I don't understand. It says, a violation enforced under this section shall be in lieu of any criminal penalty except as provided for.
I agree.
I just don't understand what that means. I'm sorry.
All
I
right,
just,
you know what 8611, I'm sorry.
what does it mean in lieu of? A violation enforced under this section shall be in lieu of a criminal penalty. What's that mean?
Yeah, the intent was that these would only be pursued as civil violations.
Can we
and
just say
never-
that?
Sure, sure.
I mean, it just becomes confusing the other way to me. I mean, I don't know, it just, so civil, which means that
Right, yeah.
the government's not going to enforce these?
No, it would be a civil infraction. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I guess the suggestion would be a violation enforced under this section shall be enforced as provided in section 8611.
That's clear. I don't know what's in that
It's like-
section, but that's clear to me, yes, that's
Okay.
clear.
Is that-
So I can probably get by with that. I don't know what 8611 says, but at least I understand that whatever 8611 says, that's what we're going to enforce
The
under.
civil penalty section.
It is.
Okay.
It is.
All
So essentially, we have two choices. It could be civil or it could be criminal. but
I get it. So the in lieu of, and
Right.
it's confusing if you don't, I just don't understand legal terms. So, I am not in favor of D.
Yeah.
One designated off-street vehicle parking space per bedroom and one designated off-street trailer space measuring 8 by 20 must be provided. I'm certainly feel like that, and I realize why we write these things because some of these things just aren't common sense to people. So we must put rules on a piece of paper. And if we're putting rules, we should certainly have a rule at the beginning of E that reads something to like, the owner must comply with all state health department regulations. I mean, documentation of septic systems inspections and repairs should be provided to Louisa County whenever completed. Just, I mean, if you're going to put the building code in there, shouldn't you put the septic code in there? I mean, I'm not saying we're getting the septic business. I'm saying they're in the septic business. And you should comply with whatever the rules say. If you then take A through H without D, it's going to take 15 months to enforce this. It just doesn't seem like there's much there. I mean, it's providing your contract, making your, it's just, I mean, you're given 15 months to do something that should take a couple days. Because we're not asking to do anything at that point. I mean, unless I'm missing something. So that's not really a question. I'm not, that's just a question for the board. I mean, it just doesn't seem like it's that hard. So I know you made a motion, you got a second. I'd be in favor of striking D, adding the wording at the beginning of E, changing the wording in H, and saying January 1, 2024.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm fine with that.
So let's go over that again. Striking D.
Striking D.
Okay.
Adding the first sentence to E, which says the owner must comply with all state health department regulations. And then continuing in E. And then the wording for H, a violation, what was your wording for H, ma'am?
A violation under this section shall be enforced as provided in section 8611 and.
Yes, at least I understand that, yes. And then changing I to 2024.
The only, well, I know we have other other people, and I'll get to you in a minute. The only thing I would say on the date, I know from talking to people in the short-term rental industry, some of these people are already 60-70% booked for 2024.
Well, what in here is a problem there?
Well, I'm just making a point. I'm not arguing with you.
I
I'm
mean,
making a
they
point.
should provide the current Louisa County code chapters relative to noise and solid waste. If you can't go back and fix that in a couple days, then you should be managing your property. Your dwelling use short-term rental shall provide contact information from the owner and property manager to the governing body. I mean, there's nothing in there that's hard. It should take 15 months to get together.
Well, what if you don't have a contact for your HOA? You got 90 days to bring that into compliance.
Where does it say HOA?
Well, it says this,
Where does it say that?
where are we? Owner must,
A.
A, short-term rental authorized property manager of Louisa County and the dwelling subdivision governing body if one exists. So you're giving people 90 days to figure out who the contact person is? In my particular subdivision, you'd be hard pressed because the guy that's the president of the HOA is the guy that draws the short straw. So we're asking them for 90 days?
I mean, all you're doing is notifying them who you are. I mean, you send them an email, hey, I'm George and I'm in charge of this house at 515 Smith Road. I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm making too much of it, but to give them 15 months to come up with this little bit of stuff here just doesn't seem reasonable. But maybe I'm probably wrong.
All right, and Mr. Barnum.
I got a couple of comments. First off, to Josh, we've heard some comments in here about the occupancy being taken out, and I'm looking at this now. It was two per bedroom, and it appears that's been eliminated.
The specific number in this code has not been stated as, or the specific occupancy has not been stated as a number. It's more consistent with the Supervisor Williams said. The occupancy permit from the building permit and the septic permit, from if they have septic. Some have, of course, a common septic or they have some other situation. But no, it's not stated in these regulations. It depends on their occupancy permit and their septic permit.
Well, the last draft that I got, which was September the 13th, did have the occupancy in it. That's what I'm reading right here. Your occupancy shall be limited to 2.
That's the planning commission.
That's what was given to the planning commission as our draft, so that's changed.
Mr. Barlow, if I may, you'll remember that the origin of what was presented at the Planning Commission came from one of the commission members, the chair, Mr. Disasway.
Now, this was a memo from Chris Kuhn to the planning commission, and that's what the draft was. Now, it has changed since September 13th, obviously.
No, the board work group never had an occupancy limit.
Well, that's the way it was presented now, beyond that.
Let me see that. That's it.
I'll make my comments so I can be quiet. These short-term rentals,
That's last year.
it came to us,
2022. Yeah. It's 2022.
it came to us because of the problems that short-term rentals were already causing in R1 and R2. It's clearly been established that the STRs are commercial use, and it is known that most subdivisions around the lake restrictive covenants do not allow commercial uses, to Mr. Purcell's point, and they came to us because they couldn't enforce them. So they wanted something put in place that would. I know that there are homeowners around the lake, and many of them are sitting in the audience that have been good renters, and they try and take care of their neighbors. But it's obvious that in many cases, that's not what is happening, especially when you have groups that are buying houses in residential subdivisions to be leased out. And they are, like the lady said, it's a money issue. So the more people you can get in the bedroom, the more money you're going to get, which is bringing us to these ordinances and stuff. I really don't like ordinances, but when we are asked to do something to protect people that have bought in a residential subdivision, and then they have a commercial use that moves in next door on a very small lot, I don't think this ordinance is protecting the people that moved into a subdivision for a residential use, especially if it's been watered down to where you don't have an occupancy limit. So, you know, I expect the people that bought in a residential subdivision were there expecting a peaceful, quiet place to live. And a lot of these people that have bought places and they're renting them out to pay for them, once they've paid for them and they move here, they're probably not going to want short-term rentals by them either. You know, we had the exact same thing with the camping ordinance. People moved in, they camped on their lots, but once they got their $600,000 home built, we don't want the guy next door.
That's back in the 90s, sir. It's like $1 million home now.
Well, it might have been, but the same thing applies. I listened to the planning commission, and I know what their thought process was. And you have what has already proven itself to be an incompatible use that I don't think we're addressing the problem that was brought to us. And we also see, I had to go through a conditional use permit to have my surveying office in a house my wife inherited. And the only question that was asked throughout the whole process is, why are you having to do this? And now we have an incompatible use where you have a commercial use beside a residence, and we don't want any rules. So it just makes no sense to me. And I can tell you, as far as I'm concerned, it's a commercial use in a residential zone neighborhood that if it's allowed at all, then there needs to be rules and regulations to protect the people that are living in there. And so if it is allowed, then I agree with the planning commission. It needs to be by CUP, and then it'll eventually get it straightened out. I think if we pass this thing, we're gonna be back here again and again trying to fix the problems that are already raising their heads and came to us in the first place. So, that being said, I will not support this. I think we have a responsibility to protect the people that have bought in these residential subdivisions, expecting a quiet place to live, whether it's in their retirement or they live there all the time, whatever. They certainly didn't buy that, I don't think, expecting to have a vacation home next to them. And you can't fault the people that have rented these properties. If I'd paid $3,000, $4,000, whatever it is, a week for a property, I'd try to stay up all night so I could get my money's worth. And so I think that's what you're gonna run into. And I think we're legitimizing a use, an incompatible use, and it's gonna be harder to try and rectify it later on. That's my 2 cents.
Mr. Gentry.
I don't know how to follow that up, other than the fact that I agree with most of what Mr. Barlow said. I'm very concerned about how we're playing around with zoning and the CUPs and all these things. We've always had situations where we had zoning. If you wanted to change the use of that, you got involved with the CUP. This seems to be bypassing some of that approach. Now, to be honest with you, I've been dealing with this problem for over 6 years. And I've actually, some of you probably remember, I would come to the board meeting and say, hey, there's a problem brewing at the lake because these short-term rentals are upsetting a lot of the people already out there. And they were talking about how they were having bad neighbors and all kinds of things. If you have an STR, it can affect the neighbors in a negative fashion. There's no doubt about that. I mean, I've had so many people on both sides of this issue, by the way, but a lot of the neighbors that I know very well that don't normally complain and kind of falls into the thought process of Tommy. If I'm on the lake and I'm there for several years and I love the peace and quiet and all the good things that go along with that retirement aspect of things, and I have an STR next to me, that's changed. So I feel like part of what we're doing here is not giving enough attention to the people already there legitimately. And if you have I'm just totally against a business coming into a residential area, period. So that's part of my ordeal I got to get around. But I think a CUP is legit because it does consider the impact of the surrounding community. It really does, and I think we need to have that to get everybody's viewpoint. Matter of fact, there's a lot of people here that that live around the STRs aren't even here tonight. I'm surprised they're not here to express their concerns. Simply, residential zoning is not a place for business. And one person said, abide by the rules already in place. Well, I feel like if we've been doing that with the STRs, because code now says you got to have a CUP. And I heard somebody said earlier there was like 400 and some STRs in the area, but there's been none with the CUP. Well, that's pretty bad because the people out there should have had an input both ways. Most of the residential folks that talk to me, they're not necessarily against STRs. I can't figure out how this would really work, but most of them are not against the STRs, but they just are not getting the kind of neighborhood reactions that they should be getting. Matter of fact, I've asked a lot of people, and they looked at me and kind of laughed, and there's a lot of people out here that know me pretty well, and I support business, I support a lot of stuff, but I don't support this proposal. But I've asked a lot of people, would you like to live next to an STR? I've asked that. And I have yet to hear anybody, well, Marie said something just now, but nobody has said that they would want to live next to STR. So that's the kind of reputation that is out there with a lot of the residential folks. I believe that we ought to take the existing code that we have and enforce that and see how that turns out, because we haven't given that ordinance a chance yet.
Mr. Williams?
I just want to follow up on a couple things. There's number one, there are HOAs to deal with issues when you have common areas. Those are your private policies and things you need to work out between yourselves. Number two, somebody standing on your deck. I had a Mr. Romano's subdivision down in Noah's Landing. I had a homeowner call me one day and say they're walking across my backyard to get to the common area. I said, well, call the sheriff. They're trespassing. I mean, the sheriff's office has a culpability for that. I mean, it's not incumbent on me as a board member to say, hey, don't be walking across your neighbor's, you don't walk across your neighbor's yard and getting your people to walk across it. Noise. We have ordinance for that. The sheriff enforces the noise ordinance. Trash. We heard from the lady that does the great trash cleanup on 652 that people picking up the trash and it's all over the place. And I mean, there's a sheriff's office for littering. Septic is not based on occupancy. It may be based on an accepted number of people that may or may not be standing there, but it's based on gallons per day. The gentleman has it right. It's 150 gallons per day per bedroom. And you can meter your water. It is certainly doable. And if I make a law that says you can't destroy your septic field, that's like making a law that says you can't go out and wreck your car. I mean, you can go out and wreck your car. And there's consequences for it. If your septic blows out the ground and you don't have any place to replace it, then you got a heck of a pickle going, and you can figure out what you want to do then, because you won't have a house to live in. Because the health department will be the ones over here going, I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you to do. Maybe you can get a $50,000 treatment system and put it in the ditch out front, because there's options for things like that. Mr. Snyder has been the building official. He knows that we don't give occupancy loads on residential structures. We give occupancy loads on commercial buildings, 30, 150, based on square footage. You give sleeping rooms. And sleeping rooms have smoke detectors inside and outside, and they have an extra window that meets a certain size for egress. So in my mind, following the existing building codes we have, following the existing septic codes we have, and just where do we draw the line for enforcement? I mean, that's a wonderful question. Some of it just applies to common sense. If you want to go out here and run your tree into a car or ruin your septic field, then you have that right. You live in America.
Mr. Martin?
Mr. Chairman, I certainly don't want to hold these good people here any longer. But we've got to the point now, I think, Mr. Williams said it. Certain things, somebody walk across your property and they're not invited, call the sheriff. It is point blank. When our attorney says civil, it looks like everything now gone to civil. We can't even get a goat on top of a person's car. I'm being serious. I mean, we had a citizen recently, her neighbor's goats turn her car up. We didn't have nothing in place to get the goat off the car. So here we go, enacting a new law that was no good after 2 weeks. Just get goats off the car. I'm gonna be honest, y'all. Personally, I will never be able to own the houses y'all talking about. I just won't be able to in my lifetime. I would never be able to afford a house that you all have, and you're blessed. But also, it's your right. That's your home, in my opinion. It's your right. Now, I got a little shack down the road here. I'm a Ferncliff. And I'm going to tell y'all right now, I'm going to break the law of Thanksgiving. I'm at 25 people up in there. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And they all going to use them 2 bathrooms like that. Okay? Unlike Mr. Purcell, I think right now, I think we got too much government in it. I really do. I think we got too much government. This is simple, we make it hard. As they say down, call the police. That's just bottom line. When I have a big party at my house, I go over to my neighbors. I said, listen, we're gonna be banging this thing out tonight. Come on over and get your beer. But that's just the neighbor, common sense, what you do. So for that reason, I'm gonna support Ms. Williams, Ms. Purcell.
Any other comments? All right, so let me repeat the motion with the amendments.
Well, everybody. Well, we need to make an amendment. We need to make a
Well,
motion for an amendment.
Well, I'm going to see if he'll accept it as a friendly amendment. So the motion was made to accept the planning, or the motion was made to accept the board work group's recommendation. There was a friendly amendment to strike D, which designates vehicle parking space, to add verbiage to E that says owner must comply with health department regulations.
With all state health department regulations.
All state department health regulations. Amendment to H, which simply changes it, a violation under this section shall be as provided in section 8611 and 86-11.1. And I don't think we did anything with the effective date.
2024, we did.
Yeah.
It's not hard.
Mr. Chairman, as the person who made the motion, I'm amenable to all of the recommendations for amending, so.
Secondary agreement.
All right, any other discussion? All right, we'll cast a vote.
Oh, my goodness.
Let's go
We're
for
all
it.
still logged
do
in
it.
here.
Drum roll, please. It'll show up sometime.
Give you to her.
Yeah, we'll get fits in a minute.
I should be in.
In there like swimwear.
You're looking at Alex.
Vote?
Tommy, have you voted?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
That's my vote.
Then you better get it in. Hit save.
Somebody got to sing the Jeopardy song.
Absolutely not.
You know what the vote's gonna be, so.
Motion passes 5-2. Mr. Barnes?
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded, we adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Meeting is adjourned.